Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ramble in the Jungle. And in this week's episode, just like the previous few weeks, we are discussing a book. And this week's book is very, very popular, especially not just in India, but especially in Bangalore. Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And it's very apt that we're coming to you from the startup hub of the country, of the world. Uh, and a lot of lessons from this book we can see apply to a lot of these startups that are in and around us that we use, that we would like to work for as well. But yeah, so the book again is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. So Arvind, I'm pretty sure you would have seen this book everywhere, all across bookstores all across the country. What was your first impression when you saw the words 0 to 1? What does it mean when you didn't have any context about who it was written by, what it meant?
Well, first of all, like you said, it's a very popular book. So when I first came across it in a bookstore, it was in the popular book section, and I always avoid that section. So I never, bothered to look at it. But then later on, when I was, I don't know how, I was just browsing through the internet, and I found out that it was written by Peter Thiel. I never seen the author's name in that bookstore. So then I saw it's by Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel, man, he is like a very brilliant guy, an absolute modern day intellectual. Uh, and I really admire his intellectual curiosity and how he wants to sort of change the world or build the future. And even the subtitle for the book, it's 0 to 1 notes on startups or how to build the future. So it's pretty interesting. And my after I picked it up, or the question that you asked, when I read the title 0 to 1, I didn't understand it the way that he meant it. Basically, what he means 0 to 1 is that in this world, a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, what they're doing is going from 1 to N. So if there is Swiggy, there is Zomato, there is Uber Eats, there are so many different things, copycats coming up, and they're all competing against each other. That's going from 1 to N. But going from 0 to 1, so there is something that is not uh, in existence, and creating it and being the first one to create it, that's going from 0 to 1. So that is a much harder task, but it's the more rewarding task, according to Peter Thiel. Just a brief history about Peter Thiel before we continue. Peter Thiel is the co-founder of PayPal, the huge the fintech company. I think it started the whole fintech revolution back in the 90s, 1999, and in the early 2000s, it started the whole fintech revolution. And he, along with Elon Musk, Elon Musk is also the co-founder of PayPal. Like uh, Peter Thiel had a company, and Elon Musk had a company called X.com.
X.com.
Yes, both of
Yeah.
them merged together and formed PayPal. So that's their company. And Peter Thiel, from there, after PayPal, he has invested in a lot of Elon Musk companies like SpaceX, Tesla, and he's also invested in a lot of other companies. So he's an investor now, and he's also a founder of this company, Palantir, which is a very obscure company, because obscure in the sense that they're not trying to hide anything. It's just that not a lot of people know about it, but people say that it's one of the most important companies right now. But because the reason why not a lot of people know about it is because what they do is data analytics, and powerful data analytics, and not a lot of people are interested in that. It's not too mainstream. So that's what he's doing. And one other interesting thing that I really loved about him when I was discovering him, Peter Thiel, he has something called as the Thiel Fellowship. Are you aware of that, Akash?
Yeah, the sort of scholarship fellowship which pulls people out of university and tells them to
Yes.
focus on business first.
Yes. Oh God, what a brilliant idea. So basically, the Thiel Fellowship is what they do is for any promising young students or young achiever, uh, if you're in college, they will give you $100,000 for you to drop out of college and build something useful, as opposed to staying in college and not building anything. Uh, and do you have any guesses as to some of the prominent Thiel fellows?
Any from India? That we can relate to?
Well, you'd be surprised to know. Even I was surprised when I initially found out. First of all, the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin.
Oh,
Yes, he is a
wow.
Thiel fellow, one of the earliest Thiel fellow, and from India, and he's still one of the biggest Thiel fellows. It's the founder of Oyo, Ritesh Agarwal. He is
Oh.
also a Thiel fellow. So it was very surprising to me when I first heard about this whole Thiel fellowship, and especially the founder of Oyo being one of those fellows. So yeah, he's a pretty smart guy, Peter Thiel, and this book uh, shows his vision for the future and shows his vision for businesses coming up and startups, and that is what this book is about. So I'm sorry I went on a whole different tangent, but yes, this was my first impression of the book when I saw it. What about you?
I think the first time I heard about this was in a college fest. I remember in 2016 or 17, we were part. I mean, there was a lot of these fests going on for all sorts of events for marketing, finance, and the rest of the stuff at a college level. And there was one fest I remember in particular. It was from the Department of Business Management at Christ University,
Hmm?
and they had that. I don't remember what the name of the fest was, but the subtitle for the fest was Zero to One, and
Oh,
it was part of it was from the book, obviously, and the entire sort of theme of the fest was you have to build something. You have to build something along the lines of marketing, along the lines of finance, along the lines of human resources. These were the sort of broad verticals that we had, and it has to be something that you take on at the start of the fest and you carry on till the end. And I think they gave that book out as well. I didn't win it, I didn't go, but I would love to have to sort of understand that particular topic at such a young age. But more than that, I heard about Peter Thiel because he was one of the economic advisors for Donald Trump when he was running
oh yeah.
in 2016, or I think earlier than that. I don't think he eventually came into the White House, but
Hmm.
that was very interesting. And I thought that, oh, this guy has gone from PayPal to investing in Facebook to um, now working for a president. And there was also some news about him buying a huge amount of land in New Zealand in order to settle down. So that was a sort of controversial thing as well. But yeah, it seems like this guy has been in and around a lot of things, and
Hmm.
now he's written a book about startups.
Hmm.
And everything goes together. He's always planning for the future, whether it was um, deciding that the future will be financial payments on mobile devices, like either a laptop or a phone with PayPal, or sort of having the intuition that everybody wants to be online and everybody wants to connect with everybody else through Facebook, or knowing that, yeah, this sort of eccentric guy would become the president, or I would really like to go and settle in a farm in New Zealand. uh, he has an eye for the future, and that's why he sort of caught it all in all of these scenarios. And this book is a good culmination of that, because every single every single sort of indication that this could build the future, this has the potential to build the future, or this is why the future will be built in this way, is a part of this book.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting for a lot of reasons. But I would just like to talk about the very title of the book. Why do you think it says notes on startups or how to build the future? Why is it an either or? Why can't it be? Because this was something that was quizzing me early on, and I really never really understood it, and I thought I had to read the book to figure it out. But yeah, why can't it be startups that build the future? Why does it have to be an either or?
I I don't think it is either or. I think it is startup. So what he means by the subtitle, at least is my perception, is that startups or how to build the future, which means that he's saying that startups are the things that build the future, right? And one of the core ideas of the book is monopoly. So what he states is that rather than aiming for competition, or having competition in your business or whatever it is, aim for monopoly. Even if you're a small business or if you're a new business coming up, he talks about focusing on monopoly rather than your competitors and seeing what they do. Because when you're in a competition, it's a zero sum game, right? Somebody has to win for somebody to somebody has to lose for somebody to win, and it's a sort of a zero sum game. But when you aim for monopoly, when you're so good that there is no competition around you, then that's something that is truly groundbreaking, right? And one of the reasons why he's so bullish on startups or these new technologies is because of this factor. He gives a lot of examples, and primarily he gives the example of Google, right? When Google started out, it took a market that was, it did not have a lot of competitors, yeah. But then, I mean, it certainly did have competitors in the beginning, but then the Google improved its technology so much that there is no competition right now. I mean, there is Bing and Yahoo or whatever, all those
DuckDuckGo.
yeah, DuckDuckGo is a new one, more privacy focused, but currently 68% of the search engine market is owned by Google, right? That's monopoly. And the only reason Google was able to reach there was because they focused mainly on the technology, on improving and optimizing their technology, and that is what has propelled our world into this current world that we are living in. Imagine, and he also says is, imagine if these things hadn't happened. Imagine if Google hadn't uh, worked on improving its search engine, or Facebook uh, created that social networking boost initially. We wouldn't have been in this modern world. We wouldn't have been in this moment where we are in the world right now, right? And that is what his main argument is. For societies to move forward, for us to move into the future, technology is the one that will take us there, and that is his main argument in the book, which
And I
is
think Mark Andreessen, who's also like, I think he's part of Andreessen Horowitz, another
yeah,
VC firm, said very very succinctly that software will eat the world. And
software is eating the world. I think that was
is
the title. I'm not sure you're talking about the blog post that he once wrote, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
And that is very very true in the examples that Thiel gives out, whether it's with Facebook, with his adversary Elon Musk, who's building several things at once, or with Google, right? And all of these companies have sort of pre-decided that, as you said, competition is for losers, and we would rather create something of our own and rather than compete away the gains, just monopolize the gains. But that is a word that is being tainted, right? Nobody wants to be a monopoly. Everybody wants to be a monopoly, but nobody claims that they're a monopoly
Yeah.
in order
For
to,
tax purpose.
for whatever tax purposes. The government's going to come
Government.
after
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Sentiments of people will be like, oh, screw the monopolies.
Yeah.
But everybody tries to paint a picture of, listen, we're part of a larger market where we are competing with so many other people. So how can you even say that we're a monopoly? How can you say that Google's a monopoly, Facebook's a monopoly, or for that matter, Instagram or any other company's a monopoly?
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, all of these companies are competing technologically, and that is sort of their main fulcrum. Like, for instance, even in our own society today, Swiggy is not just a food delivery app, right? They have a massive amount of technology behind it, even though they're basically a logistics company,
Yes.
right? They just like they know that X person needs Y thing, and Y thing is with A person at the restaurant, but they know that we can streamline it through technology, whether it's on an app on the desktop, whether they're through all of these live alerts and notifications and stuff. But all of this is done through technology, and even a simple logistics company can sort of elevate to something that is $1 billion, simply because they have leveraged technology. And that's what it rings true in the entire book.
Yeah. So if you take the example of Swiggy, there wasn't such a, uh, and we're only talking about India. Probably, in America, there was something that came before Swiggy, which Swiggy sort of copied. I'm not sure. But that sort of technology, that logistics technology, didn't exist. So you can consider it as 0 to 1. But now what you're seeing of other companies, doing the same thing, but optimizing it for something different or offering something different. Yeah, it makes sense, but it's still it's 1 to n only. It's on a horizontal path. And I would like to, I'm not sure if it's the uh, if it be the if it might be the right analogy, but the analogy of Bitcoin, the one topic that we love to talk about on and on. It's Bitcoin can be considered as that 0 to 1 kind of a technology, and all the other crypto currencies that you're seeing right now, they can be considered as 1 to n, because they are they're not exactly what Bitcoin is, but they're offering something different, but they're all based off of Bitcoin's invention. So and Bitcoin hence is a revolutionary technology, right? It created something that did not exist before. Same with a lot of things. So that gives that monopoly that he's talking about. It's not the monopoly of you going bribing the government and having that monopoly, or you doing some illegal things, of being the bully in the market and having that monopoly. The monopoly that he's talking about is the technological monopoly. And the only way that you can get that technological monopoly is you build a product that people can't, can't take their eyes off. That's the focus on the product and not on the sales, is what he would suggest. Build the product first. So that was one of his, I think, main ideas.
Yeah, and there are several other sort of points that we can touch upon. For instance, everybody thinks that having the first mover advantage is really important, especially when you're going into an untethered, unknown market. But
Yes.
he's very clearly sort of talks about how having the last mover advantage is also it can also work to your favor, especially if you're a technology company. It Now this is sort of counterintuitive, because everyone thinks that sort of in order to have a technology company, you need to leverage a network. You need to have network effects in order to sort of take one person and get his or her community into the network. But how would it play out with a last mover? So for instance, if all the networks are built,
Hmm.
and you're moving into this space as a last mover, how would you, and I know he uses the word don't disrupt, but how would you disrupt?
See, that's an interesting question. But once the network is established, for any new player that's coming in, it's going to be hard. They really have to give something that is not existing in that network. And I'm not really sure if you can consider that as a 0 to 1 technology, because you are providing you're providing something that's not there, but you are basing your technology off of something that is already existing. Right? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that does make sense, because there are so many other social media networks that came about after Facebook.
Yeah.
Even Facebook, it in and of itself it wasn't the first. I think there was. I mean, we weren't there. We weren't using social networks, but I think there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Orkut and
MySpace,
MySpace and High
yeah.
Five and some other networks. But there is a reason why Facebook succeeded in spite of this competition. There is a reason why Twitter, which came about far later, has succeeded. There's a reason why
Yes.
Reddit is still, number one, at least relatively number one in certain sort of certain areas of interest. Um, and one of the
They're offering
reasons,
something
or a few,
different than
they're
their
offering something
competitor,
different, exactly.
but they're
So
still
in the book,
competing.
they
That's
still,
a
yeah, they're
yeah.
still competing. We still have people who are either or, they're either on Facebook or they're never on Twitter, or they, partially on YouTube, or if you can consider that a social media website.
I think it is.
um,
Yeah.
it definitely is. It's content creation as well as social media, right? But in the book, he details a few points that we should touch upon of how can a company create a monopoly, or at least close to being one of the most powerful in the industry, even after they are the last, the second last, or the later few companies that enter the field. One of it is, as you mentioned, do something that is greater than the rest, which is have proprietary technology that allows you to do something.
Hmm.
And in that, he sort of details a few points. For instance, you can have new technology, which is completely off the cuff. Nobody has seen it before. Instagram was a photo only application, and people
Hmm.
resonated with photos more than Arvind Krishna checks into Starbucks, which he does every Friday morning, by the way.
What? No. Yeah.
And efficiency, which is do something better than anyone else, which I think Google does it better than any other search engine. Speed. So, for instance, what Amazon gets me stuff delivered on the same day if I'm a Prime member, right?
Hmm.
Design something that looks fantastically better. For instance, before this call, we were talking about a couple of crypto exchanges that are incredibly efficient in terms of their design. And we would rather use them than someone else, even though they're probably cheaper. Another thing I would like to get your opinion on is
Hmm.
scale. How can you leverage uh, a company growing at a fast pace, getting bigger and bigger, in order to get more differentiated, and sort of acquire a larger share of the market?
Okay. So when you can look at the example of Google, they're not just a search engine company anymore. They are targeting different markets, and they have monopolized certain markets other than search engine as well. And I think that would be one of the strategies that these bigger companies that have already monopolized one area would can do. Uh, and that's what they are doing. And another thing is, if you sort of get entrenched in the competition, even if it's for your smaller products, another company will come in and just bulldoze over both of the competition and just take it away. Like, for example, I think it's from the book where Microsoft and I forgot the company. I'm not Microsoft and IBM. Uh, yeah, no, Microsoft and some other company. They were uh, competing, and Apple came along and took the business away from both of these companies, right? Because they were so entrenched in the competition that they lost sight of what's actually important, and that was technological innovation. And when scale comes in, yeah, that's a bigger problem. You'll have to constantly keep scaling to newer markets and newer countries, all those things. But you will reach a point where it's saturated, and you can control the price and everything of the product or whatever it is. And that's when, if you are evil, if you have evil intentions, then yeah, you can do bad things. But which we are seeing right now, right? uh, you do bad things. But if you really don't have such an intention, if your true intention is to sort of take humanity in the right direction forward, then you will then you will think about different markets and different products and different monopolies that you can take advantage of. And
Right, and a perfect example of that can be, sorry to cut you, but a perfect example of that can be Amazon. Amazon sort of started off with books, went into CDs, then everything that could be home delivered, um, and now it's in video streaming. They acquired Twitch, uh, and their main cash cow is something that nobody thought would ever be used at the scale it is used today, which is Amazon Web Services.
yeah,
And they slowly sort of, I mean, they had, and they also have that the Fire Stick, which allows them to stream multiple platforms. And they could have very easily said, no, you can only stream Prime on this.
mm,
Um, and you have to get something else for Netflix, you have to get something else for Disney Hotstar or whatever else you use. But they integrated everything, and now you go to anyone's house, they more often than not have, if they have one streaming device that is enabled on their TV, it's usually an Amazon Prime Fire Stick or whatever you call that. But
yeah,
the example that he gives very clearly is that with PayPal, it could very easily have been seen that PayPal is a disruptive means of technology where you could send money via email at that time, and that could have been a threat to the established credit card or debit card servicing companies like Mastercard and Visa.
yeah,
And it's true that he says that it's true that they did take some business away from Visa, but they were a small company operating in niches in America only for the people who used eBay at that time, which eventually acquired them. But what happened was they realized that they could not, or they did not want to compete with Visa and MasterCard. It's a much bigger company at much larger scale. So what they did was they expanded the markets for payments overall, and they gave Visa far more business than they took away from them, and started integrating with these platforms. And now we've seen them had that brief stint with, I think, UPI as well in India, and that sort of take off. But what they looked for at least in principle, was collaborative advantage rather than competitive advantage, right?
exactly.
Where I compete with you, and we both fight for one advantage, which you said is just a zero sum game. I win, you lose. Um, Rather than that, they worked for collaborative advantage, which is the same thing that Prime did with their Fire Stick, and which is the same thing that a lot of these companies are doing with sort of products that they are offering in order to leverage other platforms where they both can get consumers.
Yeah. See, I think it goes back to that idea. Be so good they can't ignore you. Yeah, but
That's
not.
another plug.
Yeah.
And if you didn't get that, you blinked and you missed it, which is another plug.
Yeah. So uh, that was, I mean, that episode was about people being so good that others can't ignore you. But even with companies, or technologies, if you're so good that initially they will try to resist you, and because change is sort of it's unwelcome, right? And they will resist you, but once they realize, and even if they don't realize, the technology is so good that they are going to have to take notice of that. They just can't keep ignoring it anymore. And again, I apologize for going back to Bitcoin again and again. You do see that, the whole cycle of Bitcoin in these 11 years. It's from complete ignorance to rejection, now to sort of some people embracing it, and now mainstream uh, media, not just media, mainstream and mainstream institutions all are also embracing it, right? So although they are looking for ways they can monetize and earn money for themselves, but they're still embracing it because it's become such a phenomenon that they can't ignore it. And if you really think about it, nothing has changed about the technology. The technology always existed, and it takes time for it to build. But if the technology is it's if the technology is revolutionary, then uh, it will inevitably be it'll inevitably lead us into the future. Although it may be delayed because of regulations and whatnot, but it will eventually take us there. Yeah, and with this, I just wanted to talk about one important thing that Thiel mentions early on in the book. It's that we have seen a lot of technological changes, and it's mainly in computers and communication, right? But when you look away from your smartphone, the world hasn't changed that much. The technological change outside of your smartphone, outside of your computer, has not been much, which is something that he's trying to change with the companies that he's investing in. He's invested in this nuclear fission company. Uh, these, I think, the a battery company, that helpful in electric vehicles, and a lot of these companies. So he's investing his money based on these things. And a recent post by Mark Andreessen, I'm not sure if you're aware, back in 2020 during the pandemic, he came out with a post saying that it's time to build. And it does not mean, these technological more apps, more websites, or more things. Again, it's required, but you don't need more of what's already existing. And what he means in that, and what he says in that uh, blog post is, to build things that are outside of this uh, technological or Silicon Valley purview. And I sort of agree with that, because we are going ahead in just these fields, and we're not thinking about these other fields. I wanted to know what your opinion is on that. Do you think it's a fair assumption, or do you think that they might be a bit off?
I think it's right because you can't keep consuming something over and over again. Like, how many delivery apps can you have, right? How many travel booking companies can you have? How many hotel chains on an app can you have? And eventually you have to start expanding to a market where um, either the product is different or the consumer is different, right? So a company that is creating products for itself could be something like a Cred in India targeted the credit card only market, which was a fairly new thing, at least domestically. But what we've seen with a lot of companies and founders in India itself is that consciously not targeting the people who have the option of, say, using an elite sort of app like a Swiggy or Zomato,
Hmm.
or someone who has the opportunity to go to the US and use a DoorDash or whatever other apps they use there. They're specifically going back and saying that, okay, this sort of market is saturated because we can't really offer anything else that they already don't have. So let's go to the people who do not have it, right? Let's go to the sort of, even in tier one, tier two cities, we'll go to the people who are in need of applications that can sort of better their business or better their lives. So a good example of that, until it got banned, was TikTok, which sort of broke into the social media circle of the sort of people who had smartphones and an internet connection in tier 2, tier 3 cities in India. And was it spread like wildfire there, right? Another app on a B2B level could be something like a Khata book, which is like, I think it's a sort of a ledger system for SME companies, which you can use to sort of record all your day-to-day transactions and store it and have a document of it, which is something that could be done on a phone and a laptop, which is great because all of these people probably did not know or were averse to using an Excel sheet or any sort of data management tool. But if it was in an app called Khata Book, which is fairly intuitive and easy for them to understand. Uh, so I think the point that Andreessen made and you brought out is very true, where it is time to build, but what has to be built is going to change. People are going to either start creating new niches in terms of the products that they create, rather than creating one plus, or go to n, they go to one. um, or they start, instead of sort of focusing on products itself, they create pre-existing products for consumers who have never seen such products before, whether it's data management tools or specific photo sharing, video sharing applications for these tier 2 cities. Like, I think there's an app called Koo in India, which is sort of its own social media site.
It's a Twitter
which is
clone.
another sort
Yeah.
of right. So it's wonderful that it's happening in reverse, and I think in order to break through this is really important. And there was one point that, I mean, I haven't really gone through it. There was a essay by Sajid Pai from Bloom Ventures, a VC firm in India, or VC firm that funds Indian companies. He was on a podcast which you will, I'm sure, have either gone through or will go through, with Amit Varma on the Seen and the Unseen
Hmm.
recently, quite recently, over 2 3 weeks ago, and he was talking about the startup ecosystem, and the entire conversation was prefaced on one of his essays where the Sajid Pai divided the country into, say, India A Alpha, India B, which is basically classes of citizens by income level, and most of the startups are building for the alphas, which again goes back to another podcast that we did on Brave New World, book plug. uh, but but the larger sort of talk about this is that you can't keep creating for alphas. Eventually they will not want anything, or they will have better options either in India or abroad, because they are privy to that market. But the people who are in India A or India B or lower down the income scale do not have those options, and they are far greater in number, and they all are mobilized through a phone and an internet connection, which most of these people do have, especially with the geo revolution and the
Yeah.
cheap smartphone revolution. So yeah, it's time to build, yes, but where to build is changing significantly.
But I think one of the reasons why a lot of companies don't focus on that uh, uh, demographic that you mentioned, A and B, is because is what again Thiel is sort of uh, against, but he also understands. So what he says, the reason why a lot of companies don't focus on that market is because they don't see a means of income from that market, right? If it's alphas, they have the money to whatever it is, subscribe to the product or buy the product or whatever it is, right? And Peter Thiel says, that's understandable because a company has to make profit, but all the revolutionary companies that came out of the tech bubble or the internet bubble in the 90s, all that survived are the companies that were they were losing money then, but their value is only seen after uh, 10 15 years. It's more than a decade, right? And these investors invested in these companies because they knew the potential of that company. They were they're not making profits at all. He gives the example of Twitter and LinkedIn, where for years together the profit was marginal, but still the companies were valued at such a high price because everybody knew its potential, right? And I mean, I know it's not the right analogy, but I think the main reason why companies don't focus on that market is because of the revenue stream. And this is something even I've thought about, but I don't think I found the answer to it. How or what changes can you make, or can I make as an individual who is sort of trying to make, it is either it is either you take the income stream, or you take uh, the what do you say, the providing value thing. And I know it doesn't have to be either or, like you either make money or you either provide value. You can combine both, but I don't think I have found what it is when it comes to that particular demographic that you mentioned, where you can also have an income stream with the company that you're building and also provide value to those people, to that particular demographic. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a volume game, more than anything. People look at daily active, monthly active users as a preface for uh, growth, rather than monthly sales, or expenses, expenses minus sales profit. So it's if you have enough volume, and that volume is continuously increasing, and that is a sustainable and consistent volume over a period of time, then you can create a network soon enough, especially if it's like a dependent company that people are dependent on you. For instance, an application which allows you to document your transactions at an SME level, which is great, by the way. Um, but once that happens at scale and everybody is dependent on the network, then the company in and of itself, can function on losses because it is priced in with future cash flows. So the example that he gives was Twitter, where Twitter is worth 12 times the New York Times at the time of writing the book.
Yeah,
And the reason is because, I mean, there are several newspapers in the world, but there's probably just one Twitter social media application. There's probably other social media applications, but there's one Twitter which allows both the president to come on and then be banned off. And there's one Twitter where one tweet from Elon Musk can send a cryptocurrency which nobody's ever heard of to an
which has
anonymous scale.
basically no intrinsic function.
Right, it has absolutely nothing. It's a meme coin, but
Yeah,
people, the internet is the internet. But
yeah,
yeah, it's about a volume game, right? It's about creating active users for a very long period of time, and that's why I think a lot of these companies are seeing that, okay, there's not a lot of volume with people who earn more than X% of money. It's even in India, especially in India, given the population and the disparity. So let's sort of flip that switch and see, can we work with volume consistently over a period of time that will eventually make our future cash flows positive from negative? And is that enough for us to leverage a significant amount of funding, um, so that we sustain and get out of the negative zone, or out of losses, and repay our shareholders and our founders as well? Lots of companies in India are working on losses, but because they want to create a network effect that is large enough that will sustain with active users and will only continue to grow. So I think the shift from alpha to India B is happening, at least in terms of building, in terms of what startups are, how startups are targeting. But it is a numbers game, and I think those numbers are more dependent on volume rather than immediate revenues, because no startup is immediately profitable.
yeah.
Very few of them are.
That's true. But my question is, the companies that are focusing on the India A or India B, are they providing value? Is my question. I mean, I'm not aware of the companies that are catering to that demographic in whatever services or product it may be. But I'm not sure if they're aiming for that value, because you can take the example of Geo, right? When it came out, it was free, absolutely free for you to take in. But then the revenues started later on. Like they started charging it later on when people realized the value of it. That sort of worked, and it's still working, right? But and you can't say that it hasn't been revolutionary, because it got a lot of people on the internet. And once you're on the internet, there are a lot of opportunities for you, both in terms of having a livelihood, and also the whole social interaction kind of a thing. But that was but what are the other things that or other companies that are providing such value? Because I'm not aware of. That's maybe because I haven't gone out and looked at that whole demographic. But it does make me wonder, like, what are the things that they're providing value to that demographic that companies are doing right now? Do
I
you have
think
any idea on that?
I think right off the cuff, a couple of edtech companies are doing really well. So apart from the sort of fluffy companies that boast a lot and sponsor cricket teams, there's Unacademy, which is trying to break through tier two, tier three cities and giving them an option to, because they have a geo sim and a very cheap smartphone that can stream videos and classes in real time, has give them the opportunity to prep for all sorts of higher education, which is great. And I don't think that would be possible with with other sort of any other company that is doing it at that scale. And I think Unacademy very clearly sort of pivoted and said that, okay, the market for tuition classes in tier one cities is taken by, say, Byju's or White Hat Junior or other companies. So what we'll do is we'll provide higher education classes, like for IAS, etc., um, at a tier two, tier three level in vernacular languages as well. There are all sorts of companies called. There's a company called, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, Blackboard Radio, that does the same thing, but they do it specifically with English. Um, there's another app which I recently came across, which is incredibly fun. It's called Get Front Row or Front Row,
Mm.
which gives you classes on niche subjects taught by experts, absolute experts in the field. So, for instance, they have a class on bowling, like fast bowling, seam bowling in cricket,
Mm.
taught by Bhuvaneshwar Kumar.
Mm.
They have a spin master class taught by Yuzvendra Chahal. They have a rap class, which, if you see the forum, it's all these people who are, I mean, they're people who are rapping in Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi, Punjabi,
Oh.
and they're all, I mean, they're not from that. I mean, by the looks of it, they're not from Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai. You know, they're from these small cities who are getting on and not just learning how to rap, but uploading their content on the portal specifically for rappers, right? Getting a
Mm.
lot of encouragement, likes, and the rest, and that is helping them advance their own content creation journey, which is great. And I think that's happening. Maybe not at scale, and certainly not in terms of the revenue that these companies would like. But like Twitter, they're playing the long game.
Yeah. Then that's great. Uh, and especially with the whole creator economy reaching, booming right now. It's a good thing. All these things are happening. So yeah, I think we've talked quite a lot, although we didn't dive deeper into the book. But the main idea is that, when you are thinking about, I don't know, starting a company, the main question that you need to think about, uh, which he says, is what valuable company is nobody building? uh, and that is what you need to sort of think about. And another thing about another argument that I found online was that, not everybody can build companies that go from 0 to 1, and it's okay. There are companies that go from 1 to n, and even these small businesses, and a lot of small business owners, it's not like all their businesses are, creating revolutionary things and uh, disrupting the market or whatever it is. They are providing value on a smaller scale, and they are making money and they have a livelihood, and that's great. You don't necessarily have to think about being the next whatever Elon Musk or Peter Thiel or those kind of people, because and it's not a bad thing, right? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a fair argument, or do you think everybody should focus on building the companies that nobody else is building?
I think you should focus on catering to the market that nobody else is catering to in a way where nobody else can cater to, and providing value like nothing else. And I think this book outlines the point really well, that there is no point being the other or the one more, right? And
Mm.
if you want to be that one more, you have to do something so damn good that they can't ignore you, and that they will give you their money, and that is important, or at least give you their time and effort, energy, and stay on your platform. And you, that it's very difficult to always create a niche in a market all from scratch. It might be even more difficult to get into a market where there's already competition, and sort of create your way out of it so that you go from the 10th person on the list to the first. But I think that's happening. And we're going to see a lot of markets where people are going to cross compete really well, but
Yeah.
there's also going to be a lot of markets where they're going to cross collaborate, in order to gain a share of another market where a company was never previously in. So it's
Yeah.
exciting times, exciting
Yeah.
times.
And Peter Thiel fundamentally understood the human nature, because if you remember, I don't know in which episode we talked about, very briefly though, about the mimetic theory by this philosopher Rene Girard, where it's basically human desire is the same thing, not because it's desirable, but because the other person is desiring it, right? You desire something,
Mm.
and I desire the same thing, not because it's a valuable thing, but because I see you, because we are sort of it's we are all mimetic in nature. And Peter Thiel understood this fundamentally because I found out recently that he was a student of Rene Girard in college, and he all his fundamental ideas are sort of shaped from that, and even the monopoly idea, right? Uh, he tells you to go out of that desire to mimic others, and go into building something that isn't existing. And he knows, he understands it's hard. And I really want and this is a quote that I think would be a fine ending to the show, is directly quoted from Peter Thiel. It starts, let the flame of definite optimism burn away the mimetic virus. Use the internet to curate your environment so you can be hyper mimetic towards the rare few who are anti mimetic. Copy the people who don't copy people. Take risks, build a differentiated skill set, pursue timeless wisdom, not intellectual fashions. Be skeptical of convention and don't let it double as a shortcut to the truth. Work on problems that nobody else is working on, especially if you're uniquely capable of solving them. And ultimately, ask the questions you're not supposed to ask so you can find the answers you're not supposed to find. I think with that, uh, we can end this show. Definitely check out the book if you are interested in the whole startup space, and if you're even if you're not interested in the whole in building a company, if you're interested in how companies are built, or how societies move forward, I think it's a great book for you to understand that. So it's 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, and that's it from us this week. We will see you again next week. Till then, take care and keep rambling.